Who am I? I have lived more than 50 years of life, and in those years I have spent countless hours teaching, researching, and writing, searching for answers to some of the most mysterious questions of human life. But after 50 years had passed me by, I realized that the most important question had yet to be answered. Who am I? What makes me who I am? Am I the sum of my thoughts and beliefs, or of my positions and expertise? Am I my schooling and my degrees, my job and my bank account? Am I my family history or my social standing? Or am I none of these? After 50 years, I began a journey of introspection, peering within, searching for my true self. I started to realize that many of the things I had previously thought of as my true self were an illusion of my mind, and that my mind was largely driven by my own ego. Each time I dived deeper, I came closer to my spirit, to the source, to my soul, to the breath of God that is in me. And the more space I put between myself and the demands of my ego, the greater the emotions of happiness, peace, and love I felt. But these common emotions felt different, somehow less fleeting and illusory than they felt before when I was under the sway of my ego. I have come to realize that death is not the great misfortune of life. The great misfortune is that people live and die without truly finding themselves, and so pass their lives as if they had never truly lived, because they were living with the false self. They were living for their egos. We come into this world with an innate sense that we are an integral and inseparable part of a larger whole. Our basic senses teach us about the external world, and we start to form a mental image of ourselves. This virtual image is usually reflected in how others perceive us. We see ourselves in the eyes of those closest to us. If they see in us intelligence, beauty, and goodness, this becomes what we see ourselves to be. But is this mental image truly what we are? Or is it just the ego, the false self that starts to form early on in our lives? Is there a deeper self awake within us that knows that the true self is too great and expansive to be confined by a mental image or by layers of flesh? It is the true self of which God tells us when He says, "I breathe into him of my spirit." Here then begins the struggle in every one of us. The struggle between the mental image that is made up of other people's perceptions and the truer self that lies forgotten deep within us. And that struggle continues for much of our lives. Who am I? We continue to live with the ego, and little by little we ignore the voices within that tell us of our deeper beings. until those voices eventually fade into silence. On a subconscious level, we know the ego is fake, and thus it is vulnerable and in constant need of defense. We defend it because we fear that our egos may be exposed and that we may have no other self to hide behind. Here lies the root of all human suffering. Who am I? I might not be what I believe myself to be. I'm not my positions or my talents. I'm not my skills or my vocation. I'm not my degrees or my education. I'm not even my outward appearance or my opinions. This might sound strange, but even if you don't believe it now, you will surely believe it soon. We will all see the truth on our deathbeds. Death will strip us of all that is not us. All of those illusions manufactured by the ego. I have seen it in my medical practice in the eyes of all of those whom I have witnessed in their final hours. Those moments of which God says, "We have removed your veil. Thus your sight this day is acutely clear." If the eyes could speak in those moments, they would be the best of teachers. They would say to us that the secret of life is to die before you die and to discover that there is no death. By killing the ego within us, we can live with the real selves that never die. Are not the 5 prayers, if duly performed, the best practical way to draw out the ego from within? Our prostration should not be confined to the physical prayer. Our hearts should be in constant prostration throughout our lives. I realize that most human misery and corruption on earth originates with the ego. It is the ego that expelled Satan from heaven when he said, "I am better than Adam. You created me out of fire and him out of mud." It is the ego that drowned Pharaoh when he said, "I am God Most High." It is the ego that caused the earth to swallow the arrogant Qarun, Korah. It is the ego that surrounded the ungrateful man with the 2 gardens, as narrated in the Quran. The ego is our real enemy. is the source of our pain and suffering. The more I searched and read, the more I realized that the ego is what makes us forget that we were created from a single soul, that we are an inseparable part of a vast and intricate whole in a universe that is ordered and beautiful. The ego is what makes us forget that our love for the world around us is the greatest manifestation of our love for our Creator and ourselves. But the ego tricks us into believing that we are separate from one another, that our own selfish desires are paramount. All maladies of the mind sprout from such conceits of the ego. I am convinced that the state of unconsciousness that humanity lives in today will lead to more suffering and more bloodshed, unless human beings wake up and realize that we are made of a single spirit originating with the breath of God, that we are spiritual beings on an earthly journey, and that our destinies are intertwined and governed by divine universal laws. I came to the conclusion that the most important endeavor of every person on earth is to vigilantly guard against the ego within, to observe our thoughts and emotions, to create space between our consciousness and our ideas and feelings. In doing so, we become free from defining ourselves through anything other than our true selves, and we restore our mastery over emotion and thought. What we need is a revolution, a new awakening, a heightened individual and collective awareness, a new age to reclaim our souls. There is no escaping the need of this awareness. The alternative is a loss of our soul, followed by a total destruction of the human race. This journey is both mine and yours. It is our collective purpose. It is the way to my salvation, your salvation, and the salvation of all humanity.